Hey readers, you joined our mailing list, so you get a special surprise. I have spent hours compiling images that I made through AI to show you what I see when I'm reading this to you. I really hope that you enjoy the book. Here's the first 3 chapters for free, and if you're in New Zealand, you can buy direct from me at runguaangel.com. Thank you.
Chapter 1 The Night Visitor. The rain started just after midnight. Not soft rain either. The kind that rattled old windows and made the city outside smear into orange light and shadow. I lay awake on my mattress, staring at the glowing red numbers of my clock. 12:15 a.m. The exact time I had been born. Early on a Wednesday morning in August 1981. Technically, I was 18. I had stayed awake on purpose. I wanted to feel it happen. I wanted to know if turning 18 would feel like anything at all. If some invisible door would open. If I would suddenly feel older, freer, different. Mostly, though, I wanted to see if I cared as little as the rest of the world seemed to. Turns out I did. I felt exactly the same. Restless, lonely, disconnected from everything around me. My bedroom was a small square box perched on the end corner of a 4-story Auckland apartment complex. A rusted fire escape ran down one side of the building, beside tall double glass doors that overlooked the wet city street below. The whole room felt temporary, like I had never really unpacked my life properly. A mattress on the floor, a small desk, one chair, books stacked everywhere because books had always stayed when people didn't. Posters of dark, sexy demons and vampires covered the walls beside worn prints from my favourite novels. The city glowed orange beneath low clouds. No stars. There were never any goddamn stars when I needed them. The flat was quiet for once. Nara had finally fallen asleep down the hall, and even Squeak had stopped scratching at my bedroom door. Rain hammered against the glass while distant sirens echoed through the streets below. Then came the tapping. 3 slow knocks against the doors. I froze. Tap, 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 tap. At first, I thought it was the rain bouncing off the fire escape. Then lightning flashed silver across the room. Yep, unmistakably, there was someone outside. My stomach tightened. I knew this dream. I sat up slowly, blanket tangled around my legs as I stared toward the glass. A tall figure crouched outside on the narrow fire escape railing, one hand braced against the doorframe while rain poured around him. How the hell had he gotten up there without me hearing him clomping up the metal stairs? Then I realized he wasn't actually touching the fire escape at all. He was hovering slightly above it, dark coat flapping outward around him in the storm wind. I couldn't breathe. He was broad-shouldered and solid, dressed in dark clothes soaked through with rain. Dark, messy hair hung damp across his forehead, and a rough beard shadowed his jaw. His eyes were not glowing. I wondered why. They always glowed in other dreams. That disappointed me slightly. However, they were something far more beautiful than anything I had dreamed before. A deep pale purple, completely unnatural, completely impossible. and yet somehow exactly what I had expected. Those eyes didn't frighten me. I knew those eyes. I had spent countless erotic nights lost in them already, inside my dreams. Every instinct should have told me to scream. Instead, I crawled toward the doors, because getting properly up off the mattress on the floor felt beyond me right then. And usually these dreams moved very quickly back toward the bed anyway. I stayed sitting on the floor staring up at him while I slowly shuffled backwards slightly, back toward the mattress, in a silent invitation to come inside, like I had done 100 times before in dreams. Because I thought I was dreaming. That was the stupid truth. I had been dreaming about vampires for years, since I was 13, maybe younger. Dark, steamy dreams about the one climbing through my window and taking me somewhere else. Somewhere I didn't have to be ordinary. Somewhere I didn't have to feel abandoned. Somewhere I didn't have to keep pretending I was okay. In those dreams, I always opened the doors. So I opened them. I reached forward and unlatched the tall, double glass doors beside the fire escape. They swung outward into the storm, rain immediately blowing sideways into the room. Freezing air flooded over me. He stepped inside without a sound, solid and silent as smoke. Up close he looked impossible. Not like some polished Gothic prince, more like someone who could build fences, ride horses, and disappear into the bush for 3 days with just a pocket knife and a piece of string in his pocket. Oh yeah, and kill you if necessary. Water dripped from his dark jacket onto my wooden floorboards, while the city glowed behind him through sheets of rain. "What's your name?" He stepped closer. "It's Lucian." The name sounded ancient in his voice. He moved toward me slowly then, coat still dripping rainwater onto the floorboards, while I stayed sitting there on the mattress, staring up at him. He was so big, and the room was so small. I reached my hand out toward him instinctively, and after only the briefest hesitation, he took it and helped pull me gently up off the floor. Even standing now, he still had at least 4 inches over me, but at least I no longer felt like a mouse staring up at a wolf. We sat there for a moment, my hand still in his, intimate, dangerous. His eyes studied my face like he was trying to memorize every detail before something seemed to shake him loose from the thought. "You're shaking," he murmured, as he quickly closed the doors behind him, shutting out the freezing wind and rain. He pulled off his coat like he intended to offer it to me, then seemed to realize it was completely waterlogged. Instead, he draped it carefully over the only piece of furniture in my room not already buried beneath books. "Are you afraid of me?" he asked softly. "I probably should be." A quiet smile touched the corner of his mouth. "Probably," he admitted. Tiny drops of water still clung to the ends of his dark hair, occasionally falling onto the floorboards beneath us. "But you opened the door anyway." "I thought I was dreaming." "And now?" I looked at him properly then, at the pale purple eyes, the soaked dark clothes, the impossible stillness in the way he stood. "I'm not dreaming, am I?" That question seemed to please him more than if I had simply believed outright. I grabbed the dry towel hanging on the back of my bedroom door and tossed it toward him. He caught it with supernatural speed. One moment it was airborne, the next it was already in his hand. He rubbed it quickly through his wet dark hair with a quiet mumbled, "Thanks." The movement happened so fast it almost blurred, between heartbeats. I found myself staring at his chest suddenly. I wondered if he even had one anymore. A heartbeat? Do you... Am I alive? He finished gently. I nodded. Somewhat, he said quietly. My heart beats occasionally. Not like yours. I took that in silently. The silence stretched between us again while rain hammered softly against the glass behind him. Lucian's eyes wandered again, taking in the rest of the tiny space we were overfilling with our mere presence. The mattress on the floor, the piles of books stacked against the walls, the dark posters, the little desk shoved beneath the flickering lamp. Then one eyebrow lifted slightly. I take it you've read all of these? He asked, glancing toward the complete collections of Anne Rice and Stephen King beside my bed. More than once. That explains a lot. I folded my arms defensively. What's that supposed to mean? A quiet smile touched his mouth again. You opened the window for a vampire. I rolled my eyes slightly. Oh, come on, like you wouldn't have climbed through it anyway. That actually made him laugh properly. Low, warm, dangerously attractive. I would never enter uninvited, he said. You floated outside my 4th-story flat in the middle of a thunderstorm like some creepy Batman stalker. I was trying to make a good first impression. You were hovering. I thought it added mystery. Despite myself, I laughed. That sound seemed to catch him off guard. Not because I laughed, because I sounded genuinely happy for a second. His expression softened almost instantly after that. Not pity, something quieter, sadness maybe, like he recognized something in me he understood too well. You're lonely here, he said softly. Not a question. I looked away from him toward the rain streaking down the glass. Auckland's full of people, I murmured. Doesn't mean anybody sees you. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Rain rolled endlessly down the glass behind him, while orange city lights smeared across the wet streets below. Lucian watched me carefully. Too carefully. Like he could hear things I wasn't saying out loud. I see you, he said quietly. The words hit far harder than they should have. I laughed softly to cover it. You literally just met me. No, he said. Something in his tone made my stomach tighten instantly. Not playful, certain, ancient. His pale purple eyes held mine steadily. I've known you for quite some time. The room suddenly felt smaller. What does that mean? Lucian hesitated then, like he was deciding how honest to be. I've visited you on and off since you were young. Every hair on my body stood up. Well, that explained a lot. I should have been terrified. Honestly, I probably was, but underneath the fear was something worse. Recognition. Because some part of me already knew that was true. You're serious? Yes, he said softly. I like to keep an eye on the group homes, make sure the kids are being treated okay. There's an epidemic of child abuse in this world, you know. That hit me like a punch to the stomach. Maybe that explained why I had survived relatively intact. Or maybe I had just been lucky. That's insane. Probably. I stared at him for another long moment. Why? Lucian's gaze drifted briefly toward the rain outside before returning to me again. At first, he said softly, curiosity, duty, maybe. My part in the world, karma. And after that, his jaw tightened slightly. You kept surviving things that should have broken you. That landed somewhere deep inside my chest. Too deep. I looked away first. The room suddenly felt too exposed, too vulnerable. You don't know anything about me. I know enough. His voice stayed calm, gentle even, which somehow made it worse. You feel abandoned by everyone who was supposed to love you. Now I feel a little bit violated all over, I said with a wry grin, trying to soften the blow. Stalker. Silence. You pretend you don't care because it hurts less than hoping somebody stays. I swallowed hard. You hide inside stories because fictional monsters feel safer than real people. My throat tightened painfully. Lucian took one small step closer. You ache with loneliness so loudly that sometimes it's difficult not to hear you. Oh, I hated that. Not because it was cruel, because it was true. I looked down at our hands and realized he was still holding mine. I didn't want to let go. His fingers were cold, too cold, but his grip was careful, like he was fully aware of how easily he could hurt me. Like every moment was a choice. You shouldn't know that much about me, I whispered. No, he agreed quietly. I probably shouldn't. That honesty unsettled me more than any excuse would have. Then why tell me? His expression shifted. Old grief moved behind his eyes. Would you rather have found out years from now and believe I had lied to you? My breath hitched. He said years. How do I process that? If I stay, you deserve to know the truth, he said seriously. If you stay, I said with a small grin. His gaze dropped to my mouth for half a second before returning to my eyes. If you want me to, you're an adult now. You have choices. The air changed then, not suddenly, slowly, like the whole room had been holding its breath and only just realized why. The rain kept falling, the city kept glowing, but inside that tiny room, everything narrowed to the space between us. You can still tell me to leave, he said softly. But I didn't want him to leave. Not anymore. Chapter 2. Forever. Maybe it was madness. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was because some part of me had been waiting for him for 5 years. Maybe it was because I knew he had been waiting for me too. Whatever the reason, I stepped closer instead. I let go of his hand and I put mine on his chest, and with the other, I reached around and pulled his head down to mine. Hunger flickered across his face so quickly it barely looked controlled. Then his mouth crashed against mine. Cold lips, sharp breath. The kiss felt consuming, ancient, endless. The city disappeared. The storm disappeared. The world disappeared. There was only him. and I had never kissed anyone before. Not properly, and not like that. His hand slid into my hair while he kissed me slower now, deeper, like he was savouring something dangerous, something rare. I melted into him instinctively while he kissed me like he had been waiting centuries to do it. When he finally pulled back, both of us were breathing hard, or at least I was. His forehead rested lightly against mine. "You have no idea what you're asking for," he murmured. "Then tell me." His eyes darkened slightly. "To become what I am means forever." Forever. The word should have frightened me. Instead, it sounded intoxicating. At 18, I didn't think about eternity properly. I thought about never aging, never becoming ordinary, never feeling abandoned again. And honestly, my life felt very small back then. There wasn't much to lose. Nara, Squeak, books. That was about it. Lucian studied me quietly for another long moment. "You still have a choice," he whispered. But I already knew that I didn't want him to leave. Thunder rolled across the city outside while his fingers slowly brushed upward beneath my chin. My pulse hammered violently beneath my skin. Lucian's eyes flicked briefly to my throat before returning to my face again. "You should understand what this means," he murmured softly. "Then explain it." His thumb moved gently across my lower lip. "It means 18 forever. It means binding yourself to me for all the years to ever fall around us. It means a whole new life. It also means goodbye to this life." The words wrapped themselves around me like smoke. Not frightening, not really. Beautiful. At 18, forever sounded romantic instead of tragic. I looked around my small box room and imagined leaving it behind. That would be the easy part. I didn't think about death properly back then, because my life already felt half empty anyway. Young forever, beautiful forever, wanted forever. That was all I heard. I briefly thought about Nara and Squeak, and I realized I should have more things to lose, but I only had them. Nara would understand. I would make her understand. Nara had Polly to fall back on. She would be okay. Lucian watched the journey of understanding move across my face slowly. Then his expression changed slightly. Not hunger exactly, something heavier. "You would never be comfortable in the sun again," he whispered. "I barely see it now." That actually made him pause. Something painful flickered through his face then. "You really are lonely," he said quietly. I laughed softly, but there wasn't much humor in it. "You climbed through my window in the middle of a storm, and I still let you inside. Fair point." I smiled despite myself. Then he touched my throat again. Everything inside me tightened instantly. "You can still say no." I looked into those impossible, pale purple eyes and realized something terrifying. I already knew my answer. "I am not going to say no," I whispered. Lucian closed his eyes briefly, like this physically hurt him. Then his mouth brushed softly against my neck. Cold lips, sharp breath. I trembled violently against him. "Last chance," he whispered against my skin. Instead of answering, I tilted my head slightly further for him. That tiny movement absolutely destroyed what little control he had left. His hand tightened against my waist and braced the other side of my neck. Then his fangs pierced my throat. For one split second there was terror, sharp, burning, final. Then suddenly pleasure exploded through me so violently my knees nearly gave out. I wasn't a prude. I had given myself orgasms before. This wasn't that. A broken sound escaped my throat as the room spun sideways around me. Lucian caught me instantly, holding me tightly against his chest while he drank. Every nerve ending in my body felt like it was unraveling. My heartbeat thundered wildly beneath my ribs. Then slower, slower. I could hear it happening. Every beat, every space between beats. Then suddenly Lucian pulled back sharply. His eyes looked wrecked, hungry, wild. Before I could even speak, he dragged one thumbnail across his own wrist and pressed the bleeding cut against my mouth. "Drink," he whispered hoarsely. I did. The second his blood touched my tongue, the world came apart. It tasted impossible. Dark, sweet, ancient, powerful. I drank greedily, desperately, like something starving. It felt like liquid nitrogen entered my mouth and drove through my body down to my groin, and I imploded. Lucian made a rough sound low in his throat that almost sounded painful. Then, suddenly his control slipped. His fangs sank harder into my throat again. His arms tightened too much around me. I made a strangled little noise like a squashed cat and wriggled instinctively against him. That brought him back instantly. Lucian jerked away from my neck, eyes wide with horror. "I'm sorry," he whispered immediately. But I didn't stop drinking. I directed his other hand down into my panties, where he immediately started to explore exquisitely. I cried out as he took his wrist away from my mouth, only long enough to slice his own throat and direct my hungry mouth to it, before cradling the back of my head with his hand as I feasted on him for an eternity. Later, he told me it had only been 3 minutes. The transformation wasn't like the movies. I didn't get buried in dirt. I didn't wake up inside a coffin. It happened between one heartbeat and no heartbeat. One moment I was human, the next moment I wasn't. Everything sharpened instantly. Rain, electricity humming inside the walls, blood moving through distant veins. The city breathing beneath us, and him. The first thing I smelled as a vampire was Lucian. Vanilla, daisies, coffee, flowers, rain, blood, both mine and his. When he finally pulled his throat and my mouth apart, I whimpered softly without meaning to. He gathered me carefully into his arms and lowered me gently back onto the mattress like I was a delicate flower. I didn't feel like a delicate flower. I dragged him down over me roughly, fumbling at his waist, grinding against him in ecstasy, demanding he take me entirely. He took his fingers away, and I squealed in protest. In the blink of an eye, he was naked, and my panties were destroyed. He paused briefly to check again for consent. I growled at him and grabbed his ass, guiding him into me like I had been doing it all my life. The look on Lucian's face when he breached my virginity was priceless. But I couldn't even stop to enjoy it because I was already coming so hard, my whole world imploded around me. I writhed against him, taking what I needed from him, while he joined me in mere moments, my ecstasy egging him on. When I couldn't help it any longer, I screamed. His roar joined mine in chorus as we spent against each other, and he relaxed into my body. We were both panting hard. I briefly wondered if I still needed to breathe when Squeak meowed at the bedroom door. Then Nara piped up from down the hall, "Go, Natalie!" like we had a couple of cheerleaders in the flat. I startled so hard I nearly jumped out of my skin. It was so loud and clear. I thought they were in the bed with us the way it sounded in my ears. Lucian, disappointingly, left my body and slid down beside me, watching my startled expression, and smiled knowingly. "Superhearing isn't the best part," he said with a smirk. The room looked impossibly bright now, sharper, alive. Fear flickered through me finally. What happens now? Lucian touched my face gently. His fangs were slowly retracting. "Now," he whispered softly, "you learn how to survive forever." Behind him, storm clouds shifted just enough for moonlight to spill through the open doors, and for the first time in my life, I no longer feared the dark. Chapter 3. The Girls Who Learned to Survive. By the time I turned 18, I already knew how to disappear. Not physically, socially, emotionally, institutionally. You learn that kind of thing young when social workers start using words like placement instability and high functioning while standing 3 feet away from you in fluorescent lit offices that smell like old coffee and printer paper. My parents weren't dead. That was the weird part. Dead parents got sympathy. Dead parents became stories people could understand. Mine were just gone. Somewhere out there beneath motorway overpasses, emergency housing motels, parked cars, halfway houses, and chemical oblivion scattered across Auckland. Addiction had swallowed them whole when I was 11. It didn't start dramatically. Dad brought it home from one of his mates at the rugby club, capsules. Apparently, the guy used them to get through training. More energy, less sleep, more focus. That was how it arrived in our house. Not as danger, as possibility. Mum tried it because Mum trusted Dad. At first, it almost looked good. That was the terrifying part. They laughed more, needed less sleep, talked faster. Dad fixed things around the house at 2 a.m. Mum reorganised cupboards nobody had cared about for years. For a little while, I thought maybe they were happy. Then they stayed awake for 5 days straight, trying to finish one enormous 25,000-piece jigsaw puzzle of the Manawatu Ruapehu region from an aerial photograph. The whole thing took over the lounge floor. Tiny rivers, tiny roads, tiny little farms. I made sandwiches while they obsessed over it because nobody remembered dinner anymore. Ham sandwiches, jam sandwiches, peanut butter sandwiches, whatever was left in the cupboards. I kept making them until the bread ran out. Then the power went off. Then the fridge went quiet. Mum wasn't cleaning anymore. She was pulling things apart to reorganise them and leaving doom piles scattered all over the house. Drawers emptied onto floors, half-sorted cupboards. Random objects stacked into strange little systems only she understood. Dad disappeared for hours sometimes, then days. always looking for more meth. If I interrupted Mum because I was hungry or wanted a cuddle, she'd focus on me briefly like she was surfacing through water, try to deal with it, then drift straight back into whatever strange, hyper-focused world she was trapped inside. One time, I told her we had no food left in the house. She stared at me for a long moment, like she had forgotten children needed feeding. Then both of them crashed. 4 days straight, dead asleep. When they woke up, they went shopping. Bread, jam, cheese, peanut butter, meth. And honestly, that was the last time I remember either of them properly sleeping. I still tried going to school. I couldn't get my clothes washed properly, or dried properly, or the wrinkles out. I started wearing my hair tied back because Mum's hands shook too much to brush it anymore, and she'd never taught me how to do it myself. I stopped taking lunch because there wasn't one to take. Eventually, somebody at school noticed. A child services worker started showing up at the house. The first time she knocked, Mum grabbed my arm so hard it hurt and shoved me toward my bedroom. "Don't move," she whispered sharply. "Don't make a sound." So I hid. I sat on the floor beside my bed, listening to the woman knock on the front door, while my parents stood completely still in the hallway, pretending no one was home. Knock, knock, knock. Nobody breathed. Nobody moved. Eventually, the woman left. For a while, that was enough, until one day, she came back and found Dad selling our microwave on the front porch to some twitchy-looking guy with yellow teeth. After that, everything happened fast. Police, neighbours pretending not to stare. A social worker crouched beside me, asking if there were any relatives they could call. Honestly, I didn't own enough things back then to make leaving feel dramatic. One black rubbish bag full of clothes, a cardboard box filled with books, my toothbrush. Oh, and Craig, my bunny. The social worker looked genuinely confused when I carried him out, wrapped in one of Mum's old towels like he was some kind of tiny emotional support hostage situation. But Craig came with me. That part was non-negotiable. I remember standing on the curb outside our rental, staring up at my bedroom window thinking, what happens to kids after this? Turns out the answer was nothing special. You just keep going. Foster house, school, group home, new foster house, different school. Repeat until adulthood spits you out. I learned early not to become difficult. Difficult kids got moved around more, so I became invisible instead. Quiet, polite, independent. The kind of kid teachers described as mature for their age. What they really meant was traumatised enough not to ask for anything. There was one group home I stayed in when I was 13, somewhere out west, wedged between a dairy, a laundromat, and a row of houses with barking dogs beneath high fences. It was supposed to be temporary. Everything was supposed to be temporary. The staff changed constantly. Some were kind, some were exhausted. Some treated us like paperwork that breathed. One of the male workers started paying too much attention to me. Nothing obvious at first. That was what made it worse. He remembered what cereal I liked. Sat beside me during movie nights when there were empty chairs everywhere else. He would touch my shoulder softly when he walked past. Asked if I was sleeping okay. Asked if I ever got lonely. I didn't know enough back then to explain the feeling in my stomach. I just knew I hated being alone in a room with him. I started going to bed earlier to avoid him. stopped wearing shorts around the house. I slept with a chair wedged behind my bedroom door, shoved hard against the wall so I'd hear it open. That night, I dreamed about someone standing outside my bedroom window. Not inside, outside, watching, protective, angry. I couldn't see his face clearly, only broad shoulders, darkness, and pale eyes catching moonlight. The next morning, that worker was gone. No goodbye, no explanation, just gone. When I asked one of the women where he was, she looked at me for half a second too long before saying quietly, "He doesn't work here anymore." That was all. Adults were very good at ending conversations when children asked the wrong questions.
Oh gosh, readers, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed our cinematic chapters. A lot of hours went into making it, and I'm really proud of it. If you did love it and you want to hear more of the story, just flick me an email at hello@foreverme.club and give me your feedback, and I'm happy to send you the full audiobook for book 1 of the Moon Landing Chronicles, Landing Under the Moon. Thank you.